collaborations with Intel, Bangalore, and Tata Consultancy Services, Hyderabad. Professor Dhar serves on the board of referees for European Science Foundation, Executive Council member, JNU, Chair, Intellectual Property Management, JNU, member, Biosafety Committee, Indian Oil Company, academic committees of CCMB, NNI, and Indian Naval Academy. DPT Task Forces of Marine Biotechnology and Genomic Engineering. He is founding editor-in-chief, Systems and Synthetic Biology Journal, Springer. So I welcome you, sir, and I would like to invite you for the keynote address. Please, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Srishti. And I would like to thank Rashmi ma'am for inviting me to speak on this very important occasion of biotrends, advancement and challenges in science and technology. And I was part of the morning event for some time, and I could see that there's a renewed interest to talk about combining traditions with the modern technology. What we say is the ancient wisdom with the modern technology. Though many eminent speakers who are coming after me will be talking of science, I thought because it's in the interest of the university, also in the interest of the participants who are with us today, to know a little beyond what we generally call science. So I thought today I'll spend some time to navigate this space, the less traveled space, and hopefully it generates some unanswered questions and some projects for future collaborations. So once again, thank you very much for having me here. I would like to begin my presentation, so just give me a second to make sure that I stay within the limits of my bandwidth. I'll be switching off the video, but I'll switch it on once the talk is over. So just give me a second. I'm trying to open the share tray, but I see that it's not working. Is there someone can help in this? I'm trying to open the share tray, but it is not taking me to the next screen. Are you able to see the screen?
No, sir, it's not visible.
Not yet, right? Yeah. So there is an icon called Open Share Tray. Is that the right icon to press? If the IT people can help. Because I pressed that and still not able to. So maybe I'll just log in again in case there are any login issues. So just give me 2 minutes. And I would like to have the support of.
Sir, there is the icon with having an arrow. You just need to click on that and share the PPT from there, sir.
That's exactly what I'm doing. And the arrow is first up and now it's coming down. But I don't see my slides in the lower panel. So I'll just log in again. Huh? Just give me a second.
Okay, fine, sir. Fine, sir.
All right, I'll log in again. If it doesn't show up, no, it's not showing up. I think there's something wrong with my system. I'm using Mac. It shouldn't be a problem, but okay, if it doesn't cooperate, then I'll just.
Sir, if you allow, I can share your PPT, sir, if you allow me.
Yeah, please. So how do I do that?
So for that, you need to mail me.
Okay, email you. All right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, it's a heavy file, so I don't know. But then I will maybe speak from the file and then just give me a second. If it doesn't work, then this is the only thing we can do. Just give me a second. So this is quite heavy file. This is 57 MB. Never mind. I think I will speak and look at the slides and speak. All right. So, okay, yeah. Well, sometimes it's also good to be ready without PowerPoint slides. So let's use this option. I'm sorry.
Sir, have you mailed the PPT? If you allow.
It's a very heavy file. It's 57 MB.
Okay.
I don't know. Never mind. That's fine. I will.
Please try it again. It is sharing.
Yeah. Okay, let's get started. It's okay. As teachers, we're used to these things, so I think it shouldn't create a problem. So good. So today, what I wanted to do was to give you an overview of the way things have gone in the past and the way we should work in the future. When I say the past, I'm talking of the accomplishments that have happened as a result of the creativity of a lot of people. And because of them, we are able to connect with what we call as science today. Science is not happening as a function of the development that have taken place in the West. What I'm trying to impress upon you today is that science is something that we are naturally accustomed to, and it's a homegrown initiative going back to thousands of years when most of the civilizations were not even visible. So let's talk about, to begin with, let's say, what is science? In my view, science is a formal approach to find answers in the space of unknown. So you have an observation in the space of known. Everybody looks at a certain object, but if you have to explain it, how do you explain that object? You go down into the system and you uncover deeper layers of information. And all of this is based on what we call as creativity. But creativity is one thing, and the memory is another thing, and both can be called intelligence. The memory is what we have been used to. Say, for example, if we want to pass the exams, we make use of the memory to get the grades. So the person with the highest grades is considered intelligent, the most intelligent. That's not true. That's a partial mapping of the human intelligence, because what we are leaving out is the intelligence aspect, which is not a function of memory. So you have two aspects here. One is memory and the other is imagination. And that's where NEP 2020 comes into picture, because it takes care of the intelligence part or the creativity part, which we have been traditionally missing. So now if we have to go beyond the obvious, where are we? as students of biology, we know that if you go back to the time of Darwin, you realize that what he saw, everybody saw. But what he imagined, no one else could imagine. And if you have to rank people in the order of importance in terms of their innovative contribution, so perhaps it will not be incorrect to say that Darwin was the most significant in terms of its impact. There have been a lot of stories after that, Lamarck and then Mendel and Watson Crick and so on. But you go back to Darwinian time and you realize that the data that was in front of everybody, everyone was enjoying the sightseeing, but he found a pattern from the sightseeing. And this finding the pattern went to the next level when Gregor Mendel, found a correlation between the phenotypes, and then he called them as factors. So now you have a search going deeper and deeper. From the evolutionary aspect, Darwin said that, well, this is how the life must have evolved. But Mendel gave a meaning to that, but both of them did not see the deeper layers. They only imagined. This is when you use imagination as a function of your success in terms of the results. This is what happens when you have the data. And it's the same thing in the lab. Everybody looks at the same data, but only some people are able to see something or deeper layers of trends which people generally miss. So when you look at things at the top level, the way Darwin did or the way Mendel did, then what you realize is that this was a search of finding the composition of the organism. So Mendel imagined factors, and but he did not see those factors. You know, somebody else had to uncover the physical equivalent of what he called as factors. But when you open up the organism for the first time, in search of the composition of organism, in search of the construction of the organism, the first level, we call it as gross anatomy. When you go a little deeper, we call it histology. When you go a little deeper, we call it cell biology. And you go a little deeper, you find chromosomes. And you go a little deeper, chromosomes are made up of DNA and protein molecules together. DNA, when it made a big news back in early 50s, DNA was perceived as director of nuclear affairs. It had such a megastar attention from researchers and students across the planet. But over time, RNA community caught up and the protein community caught up, biochemistry caught up. And so you have more and more layers of information. The director of nuclear affairs became, in the minds of people, became a database of nuclear acids. That's all it is perceived. Right now, if you ask somebody, what is DNA? Oh, well, it's a database. They think that the main guys who are very important is RNA and protein. Not far from reality. Of course, they are very important because bulk of the information is unpacked. But is that the final frontier of our investigation? No, because if you go beyond DNA, you leave biology and you enter the layer of chemistry. Everything is chemistry, even DNA is chemistry, protein is chemistry. You leave chemistry and you enter the zone of atoms, the periodic table. And if you want to go further, you realize that an atom is 99.99% space. So now you cannot go further because you don't have a microscope that can study the space, that can, you don't have a GFP for space. You don't have a chemical that will color the space. You don't have that, which means now you have entered a zone when light is not stopped by anything. So far, whatever you were doing, right from gross anatomy up to the level of chemistry, light was stopped by something, and it is this rejected light or the reflected light that we call as information. And from there you build data, from there you build knowledge. But now we have a situation when the light itself is not stopped. So when you have a situation like this, then you enter into another area wherein you think philosophically, because from philosophy, poetry, or for imagination, you don't need data. You just need some kind of imagination to extend the story beyond the logical domains. So now you have a situation at the level of physics. When you, even if you go deeper, what you're seeing is space and space and space. But the important point here is, what is the space made of? If you look at the atom the way it is described in the physics textbooks, you will see that there's a nucleus and then there is an electron moving around the nucleus. You ask any student, what are you able to see? Give him a hydrogen atom. What are you able to see? Okay, sir, I'm seeing the nucleus and I'm seeing the electron and a certain pathway. Nobody tells you that I'm seeing 99.9% space. Nobody tells you that. 99.9% is space, but nobody tells you that answer. Because we are not trained to think, we are trained to memorize. So let's see what this space, 99.9% is made of. This space, if you look at carefully, has got for example, the space that we are surrounded. It's the same as atomic space. It's the same as the space that we are surrounded. It's the same space that is when you leave this planet. So in general, if you look at the space, of course, the content of the space might be different from place to place, but in general, I'm saying, and on a very broad note, space has got dust particles, space has got neutrinos, space has got gaseous material, space has got cosmic rays, magnetic fields, radiation, and now you have mobile phones. You also have that kind of, composition of the space. So this space is not empty. It is full of some subtle matter, which we are not able to observe. Now, when we're talking of biology in this context, now I don't want to go too deep into physics and chemistry because we started from biology. When we are going in biological direction, then it is important to understand that when you started from, let's say, pea plant, you ended up at atoms. Now you're going deeper into the space, and you found that this is the composition of the space. Where is the life operating system? Because so far you've gathered matter. Now we have to go a little beyond. So this, the entire range between the atom and the gross body, would be a physical space that we are familiar with, either looking at each other or looking through microscope. But there is another layer of construction of the human bodies, and for that matter, the animal world or even the plant world. So you have first layer as the body, as the gross space. The second layer, which is the subtle layer, the second one, is the layer of thoughts. When you think, this layer is not visible in the form of cells and tissues. This layer is visible when you have EEG machines capturing the information. So you suddenly realize, oh my God, there is so much of thought waves emerging from my brain, and you can actually capture it. I was part of the test experiments long back, where they fix a headgear with a lot of pins, and then it is so amazing. You can see your thought waves going up and down, thousands of them per second, thousands of them. The whole screen is full of that. And then you realize, okay, this is what I'm made of, thoughts. Well, logically also we know we are made of thoughts, but it's like a physical manifestation of the logical observation. What is the third layer? Is that all? No, there's a third layer. That is the layer of emotions or emotional intensity. Now, what is this layer composed of? You see, when I say thought and emotion, we collectively together call it mind. But these are two different layers. These are not same layer. Thought and emotion are two different layers. Thought is beyond emotion. It is not connected with emotions. It can be connected as an input value, but its physical manifestation is separate from emotions, because you can capture that on the screen, you can clearly see that. So for example, when you laugh, somebody cracks a joke, you laugh, or somebody is very sad, something painful happened, and we cry. When we laugh and cry, please notice that when we laugh and cry, we do not think. We think just before the laughter, because thought is an input into this laughter. Thought is also an input before we get sad and cry, but thought is not carried on when we are at the peak of our emotions. It is different. It is independent. So when we are laughing and crying, we are not thinking. When somebody is, a ball is coming to the batsman at a great speed, 100 kilometers an hour or more, hardly has a second or maybe 2 seconds to respond, this person is not able to think. It is just a reflex action. So this is what we call as a thoughtless state, but it's a distinct state of emotions. These three states are within our experience. We have just seen the demonstration of that from gross body, which is from the top level observation down to the level of atoms. If you call it a gross level, then you have the level of thoughts, then you have the level of emotions. These three levels are within our experience. But these three levels are not composing life. They are the manifestation of something. So the last level, which is the life energy or the life-giving substance, or whatever you call it soul, you call it Atma, you call it spirit, you call it Ruh, whatever you're comfortable, that's fine. Because these are all names. This is not composition. You can give any name. You can give apple and orange to that final level. But that level, which is that of the life-giving substance or the life energy, is a logical derivative. We have not experienced that yet. We have experienced the level of gross construction, the level of thoughts and emotion. This life-giving substance or the life energy is the domain where you don't have anything. This is beyond thing. So far there was thing. Now it is beyond thing, and we call it nothing. It is no thing. Or in other words, in Hindi or in Sanskrit, we say this is Nirakar. First there was Sakar, there was an Akar, because of which there is a Sakar, and now there is Nirakar. If you go by the direction of science, or you go in the path of spirituality, what you call as spirituality, in both the cases, you end up at nothing. Nothing means no thing. It's not a thing. So this is the layer that people are after now. We have spent more than 2 centuries chasing after the matter. Now is the time to go beyond matter. And there are schools and research centers and institutes created globally to investigate, and they still call it the science of consciousness. Please understand that the consciousness word is a manifestation of the life energy. It is not the life energy itself. It is at a higher level of life energy, you could say a phenotype of the life energy. It is still not the actual substance. And that is the one that spiritual people are after. They have been after that for a long time. And that is the one that is the fundamental chassis of life. So when you think of science, this is where you have to go. Because all the other levels are an outcome of this fundamental life-giving substance. Everything is secondary to that. We have somehow missed the primary level, and we have hunted after the secondary level. Because of the hunt, of course, it was not illogical to hunt after the secondary levels, but because of that, we are able to create many fields, let's say physics, chemistry, history, geography, biology, English, or all the other languages. They are in the something domain. They are not in the nothing domain. They are in the something domain, all right? So when you go back in time and you ask yourself, what is it that was the origin of something? Scientists tell us that it was the Big Bang, which was the origin of, and before the Big Bang, there was nothing. But after the Big Bang, now there are galaxies, there are stars, and there are so many things that have happened. So those who have studied nothing were called sages or saints. Those who studied something, they were called scientists. But now scientists they have reached kind of a saturation point in the study of matter. They want to get into this in the domain of nothing. So what did people do back then? How did they study nothing? The mind was the lab, and intensity was the key. Intent was the approach. That's all they had. They didn't have an external lab. They created a lab out of their own mind. And they went to mountains, they went to caves, because they needed absolute stillness to investigate into the thought process itself. So here there's a beauty of experimentation where you're not dependent on an animal lab, you're not dependent on a molecular lab or a biochemistry lab. Your own mind is the lab. So they went to the mountains, lived with the rocks, and they are our traditional rock stars. These rock stars, they didn't go to the university. They went to the universe. And what did they ask? They did not ask what is the function of this cell, what is the function of this gene or protein or the knockout mutants. They didn't go to that level. They straight went and hit the bullseye. As you have seen a while ago, that the fundamental layer of nothing is the ultimate layer of, is the final frontier of science. If you are able to capture that, everything else is a manifestation of that anyway. So they asked the question, what is life? Does the universe run on a fixed soul budget? If there are souls, is the budget fixed? Or are brand new souls cooked into physical existence every moment? They also asked that everything is solar energy, everything comes from the sun. Everything on this planet is an outcome of the solar energy. If the sun disappears from the space, then in 18 hours, it will be minus 280 degree, life will cease to exist. Every form of life will cease to exist. That means eventually we are the outcome of the solar energy. So what needs to be added to this solar energy to make solar energy, which is within the human body? What is that question mark? What is that missing link? And they are investigating this as a scientist. So when you're investigating something as a scientist, because you do not know what to expect, it's a space of nothing. So you start with the mind. Remember, we saw that a while ago when we said mind is nothing but a combination of two things. One is thoughts, another is emotion. So they said, well, both are within my control. The lab is within. Let me try to see through thought experiments, what are the dimensions of human mind? So they found that there are at least 4 dimensions. One is what we call as intellect, buddhi jisको हम बोलते हैं. Second, what we call as memory. Third is the self-identity. We call it ego, but ego does not mean arrogance. It means self-identity. And the last one is cosmic intelligence, or the intelligence that we just reviewed, the highest intelligence. That is the 4th layer and the final frontier of science. Now, when you use intellect, intellect is like a sharp knife. If you use the intellect, you're successful because it's logic-based, it's reason-based, it is evidence-based. So when you use the sharp knife to cut, for example, you have an apple in front of you and you want to ask as an intellectual question, what is apple made of? So how do you answer this question? You answer this question by cutting the apple. Now, when you're cutting the apple, cutting, from histology, you go to cell biology, chemistry, you cut it so fine that the apple is totally mashed and you spread it on the table. You have a lot of information. This is called reductionism in science. You have a lot of information. You have found the composition of apple, but the apple is gone. That means the nature of intellect itself is that when it cuts, you get data, but the original object is gone. Which is why sometimes on a lighter note, They say don't use intellect too much in relations. If you use a lot of intellect, then you're cutting every time you're calculating. If I'm going with somebody for a cup of tea, how much is he spending? How much is she spending? This is intellect. And this is cutting. When you cut a lot, the original relationship is gone. You're successful in intellect, but the original object is gone because that's the nature of intellect. So what do? You use emotions as a glue. Emotion is a glue. That is what you use. But again, intellect is a very, very nice and a very successful tool in science because that's how we got different disciplines. We talked about intellect, and the second thing was about memory. This is, well, we'd say memory, we just give a certain grade, alphabet, let's say A plus, and so on. But this itself is composed of many components. Memory can be genetic. As you know, the students of biology, memory can be horizontal. It can be evolutionary. When you say horizontal, it means evolutionary memory. It can be conscious memory, subconscious memory, or even unconscious. But ultimately, we have to reach a stage, whether we are composed of 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layer, doesn't matter. Ultimately, the role of the human being and the purpose of this existence is to touch the highest level of intelligence. So back then, they asked this question, how do I reach the highest level of intelligence? So they devised 2 methods for that. One was speaking to the creator, because you have to assume that there's a creator. Of course, without assumption, even if you don't assume, still it is there, because somebody has created. There is a higher intelligence. So when you speak to the highest intelligence, when you speak to the creator, you call it prayer. When you listen, you call it meditation. See, these are 2 tools. Prayer means speaking. Listening means it's meditation. Either you're listening what is happening or you're speaking. In both the cases, what you're doing is you're reducing the thoughts. Thought replacement or thought reduction is giving rise to the surge in energy. How does it help? For example, if you have 100 thoughts and 100 units of energy, cerebral energy, in 100 units of thoughts, logically, each thought gets 1 energy unit. Now, suppose you're praying or you're meditating, you're reducing the number of thoughts. Let's say now you have from 100, it becomes 10. When it becomes 10, you have 10 units of energy per thought. You reduce it further, you have 1 thought, but all the 100 units of energy. So now you realize that first 100 units of energy and 100 thought means 1 energy unit per thought is a normal standard level of existence. Now, when you're enriching your thoughts 10 times more, people call you scientists or philosophers. When you enrich it still further, all the 100 units are available for just 1 thought, you're called a realized being or a sage. The entire goal in this whole process is to increase the energy level. Because the more you increase the energy level for each thought, the more enriched it becomes, the more intelligent we become. Which is why we say, please don't distract yourself, because distraction means you're spending your internal energy budget on something that's not useful. Some back of the envelope calculations indicate that we have 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Imagine if we compress that into a certain number, which is absolutely essential, how much of intelligence we can discover within ourselves. And we do discover that, there are certain moments where we discover that. For example, when we go to movies, there is absolute darkness, stillness. You don't check your mobile phones for the Insta updates. You don't do Facebook chatting there. You're absolutely available for what is there on the screen, and the outcome is what? You're not studying. You're not actively participating. What you're doing is observing what you do. And because of which your memory surge happens. Your memory increases many, many times. So once you witness the movie, then the memory of the movie will stay with you for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. You don't need to do any revision. You can still relate to certain scenes. If somebody says, okay, write an essay on the memory on this movie, after 10 years, you can still write at least 3 or 4 pages, which means that we have the capacity to increase the memory, but it is just we choose not to do so. And there are ways to increase it. So back then, people also asked, well, there is a periodic table, we know, but what is the periodic table of the universe? And so they said it is ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And people made temples out of them. You know, there is a water temple, the temple wherein only object of worship is water. In, for example, Trichy, there's a temple where the object of worship is earth in Kanchipuram. There is a temple where the object of worship is air, just air. This is Sri Kaleshwaraya temple, Swami temple. I'm not able to spell it correctly. And then there is a temple on fire. And then there's a big temple that you all know is Chidambaram temple, which is the temple of space. What is the deity there? It is space, which means these are scientists. This was not about blind faith. It was not about imagining something. It is that there is something which is evident, which is visible, and now you're trying to go beyond. So we had our own set of sages who gave us phenomenal discoveries. For example, Pythagoras theorem by Baudian. Aryabhatta gave us treatise on mathematics in the form of verses. Brahmagupta, they are saying that he invented zero. And not only that, he also made the rules for treating zero with respect. What was the origin of zero? That when he went deep within himself, remember, mind is a lab. He found that there is nothing. Actually, there is nothing. What am I searching for? Actually, there is nothing. This is no thing. It's beyond thing. So he said, can I indicate the space somehow? And then he indicated the space by way of making zero. Now, zero is the only numeral where you can start from anywhere and end at anywhere. It's kind of when you have a freedom because it's space, it's infinite. You can start anywhere and end anywhere. If you look at the other numbers, you have a certain starting point and an end point. Only for zero, there's an exception. So you can imagine. So likewise, Bhaskaracharya told us about gravity, decimal system, calculus. Hemachandra told us about the Fibonacci numbers. Sushruta gave us the science of surgery, and he's considered as the father of surgery. Charak as the father of medicine. Panani as the father of Sanskrit. He gave us a lot of grammar rules for treating the Sanskrit. Again, Patanjali, he told us about yoga. Now, these are not simply, these are not the manifestation in the, this might look something in the gross world, but what is happening is that this is all getting manifested within, and this is an outcome of their life experience. So people were so intelligent that, for example, if you look at and the application of our Indian or Sanskrit words, well, Pratham, Ditviya, Tritiya. How about when you hear that this could have become Protium, Deuterium, and Tritium? Brata became brother, Sansad became Senate. We say Senate. We are so proud to pronounce Senate, but we don't know that this origin is Indian. Likewise, there are many Russian words. Putnik, for example, we know Putnik in Russian. The origin is Pathik. Pathik became Putnik. When we say, in our Hindu system, we often say 108 names of Shiva, Kali, Durga, and there are 108 beads in the mala. What was the origin of this 108? When you look at the diameter of the sun and diameter of the earth, when you divide the diameter of the sun, you can do this right now, available on Google. When you divide the diameter of sun with the diameter of earth, you get a number which is 108.3 as a cosmic constant. As a respect for this cosmic constant, we started our culture. And like that, there have been a number of them. So now if we have to make the future students, our next generation of students, future ready, what should we do? There's a pressing need to create a new space wherein you connect the ancient wisdom with the modern technology. Because if we talk about what happened in the past, as I was just relating certain names, this will always be considered as their accomplishment. But where do we come in? I think I would strongly suggest students to read the work of Professor Manjul Bhargava, who's a Fields Medal awardee, Padma Bhushan. He works at Princeton University, and he has done an amazing work wherein he found that Fibonacci numbers are connected with Hemachandra's poetry back in 1050 AD. Likewise, the Pascal triangle that you may have read, this has got connection with 500 BC verse written in our ancient textbooks. And he's also collecting evidence. Now, this is not faith. This is not belief system. Belief is when you do not see, but you trust. But science is when you see and you trust. That's a big difference. So he has now, it's a big mission that he says there are some Sanskrit verses that have codes similar to those used in NASA missions. And he's often consulted for that. But anyway, that is his CV. Let's not get into that. What is there for us? You see, we have not so far, what we have done so far is that we have been trained to read and write and listen. That means what? You are always trained to use the sense of vision and sense of hearing. Only two senses have been used in our curriculum. You take any curriculum, this is true of all the curriculum, whether here or abroad. It's time to design courses in the area of touch, smell, and taste. Because we have 5 senses. Remember, we have 5 input devices into our system. Only 2 of them are used. Why can't we do the 3? And when you do that, that means your entire intelligence is used for the infrastructure that nature gave us. See, we teach brain, but not the mind. It's time to focus on something which is beyond. We tell the students to dream, but we do not teach dream as science. Dream as a science, trust me, if you look into the publications and how people are using this technology, that's within us. It's not outside us. All of us dream. And they are amazing, amazing body of work, which tells us that, dream has a different level of intelligence. When the body sleeps, brain becomes more intelligent. And because brain becomes more intelligent, brain is able to create these audio-visual movies that we call as dreams. Now, if we are able to capture that, imagine when your input value is 0, the dreams are on, right? But how about if the input value is 0 when we are awake? See, at the time of sleep, the input value is 0. But when you are, sorry, there is a disturbance here. When the input value is 0 into our system when we sleep, the brain is on and we are able to visualize dreams. But now, suppose you don't sleep, you are awake and the input value is 0. Can we create an audio-visual movie without getting in the dream state? That is what a lot of people are working on. Interestingly, we remove life from sciences. We'll remove life from organisms and call it life sciences. That's not fair, because if you say life sciences, where is the life component? We're not teaching life. The life-giving substance, remember there are 4 layers, the body layer, the thought layer, emotion layer, and the last one was the life substance. We don't teach life substance. We don't use that in the curriculum. So it's unfair that we are teaching biology without telling what is the life-giving substance. We also need to tell our students how the 5 elements are interconnected within the body and the beyond. We need to teach consciousness as a subject. We need to teach, for example, if we are talking of DNA repair, there's a DNA damage, and now we need to teach how DNA gets damaged and repaired. We teach DNA degradation. We should also teach protein degradation. We should also teach what is degradation. It is death of that particular part of our cell. So if a part of DNA dies, we teach that. Part of the protein dies, we should teach that along with DNA as a death. I'm talking of concept as a death, not as a single specialized subject. We should also teach chromosomal death. We should also teach cellular death. For example, the eyelash dies in 150 days. RBCs die in 120 days. Stomach cells die in 2 days. And then there's a long human death menu. It can happen with any process. It can be abortion, it can be stillbirth, it can be accident, it can be suicide, it can be natural death. And then the death of the planet and the death of the universe. When you teach all of that, then your topic of death is complete. As long as you're just teaching death as a very specialized topic, only for a certain moment, there are always confusions because the completeness has not been achieved. And this need not be a 3 or 5 credit. It can be just finished in 2 classes. So when you're talking of death, when the respiration stops, so the death itself happens in 5 phases. First, the respiration stops, then there is no sensory response, then the temperature drops, body gets heavy, and degradation sets in. In our ancient system, we have already recognized this. When the respiration stops, we call it prana is left. No sensory experience, we say apana has left. Temperature drops, we say samana has left. Body gets heavy, udana has left. Degradation sets in, vyana has left. So our ancient textbooks have descriptions for what we call as physiological processes. Back to the future, well, it's time to build thought-operated machines. If you are interested, we can collaborate on that. It's not that difficult. It is just that we're not thinking along those lines. We have the machines to understand the typed commands. We have the speech-operated systems. But what people have already developed, it is not still in the market. They have already developed the thought operating system. That means your machines are going to be, tomorrow, there is a technology that's going to come in the market where people will read the thoughts. Well, that is good or bad, we don't know. Maybe we'll lose most of our friends if they read our thoughts. But they will be used for specialized purposes. We need to work on these topics, whether the thoughts can alter cell division. Well, there are certain evidence, so that's why I'm pinpointing to that. Do sound waves impact the water molecule arrangements? Can sound waves break and repair DNA? But when you talk of sound waves, what is sound itself made of? You see, when you look at the typical physics definition, sound is considered as a disturbance in the medium. If you typically look at the kind of definitions you have, it is a disturbance in the medium which is there long enough for creating an impact. And then we say there is a trough, there is a certain peak, and there is a wavelength, there is frequency, and all blah blah. We say a lot of things. But what is the sound wave itself made of? That needs to be subject of investigation. We do not know at the moment. Can we store memory on the sound waves in future? Your memory devices are getting smaller and smaller. And trust me, there will be a time when a wave will be your memory device. People are working towards that. We also need to understand, does the fasting kill cancer cells? You see, we all have cancer cells. Everybody has cancer cells. Nobody is free from them. But these are scattered across the body. But if they gang together, they create a lot of trouble. So fasting has been documented. In fact, there is a lot of work going on in Harvard, and there are some more, many more places where this work is going on in the US and in Israel, wherein they are able to connect what we used to call as meditation or fasting or a certain practice with the scientific outcome, the evidence-based effects, which our ancient sages had said, but because an American is not talking about it, so we don't care. Now Americans are talking. I hope we'll care now. And I hope that we will use it in our curriculum. I would like to give you maybe another 2 minutes. I'd like to stop and then take questions. if any. Say, for example, we always say soul is energy, and energy is a waveform. The challenge that I would like to give is to all the students who are here. If it is a waveform, where would you place it on an electromagnetic spectrum? Would you place it towards the higher frequency or longer wavelength? And if either way, then what's the reason for that? Or we need to create a different structure of the spectrum. So please do think about it, because these are fundamental. It's time that we bring the NIF innovations that are the homegrown NIF content into the teaching practices and our research projects. So there are a lot of things to share with you, but I hope today you got a slice of what I'm thinking along. I think it's time that, as Sadhguru always say, it's time to create conscious planet. We have spent a lot of time to understand the matter. It's time to bring the fundamental chassis of everyone's life into the science. And that way you will have a sustainable planet. We need to, and this will be my last statement, we need to teach, or we need to train our students in mastering the movement and also mastering the stillness. Mastering movement, you go to the university. Mastering stillness, you go to the universe. Unless both of them are complete and balanced, we will not have a perfect human being. So thank you very much for your kind attention. I think we're running out of time. And I'd like to thank your patience and listening to this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to ask the attendees if they have any queries, they may ask.
This was the kind of talk I do not give normally, and this is especially for today. And when you talk of nothingness, I think there is not some, a question would be something. So I guess people will have hesitation to ask, but I think there is a, yes, please. Yeah.
Namaskar. Sir, as you mentioned that when we are in like semi-conscious state, we have like a higher intelligence than normal state, and daydreaming or a kind of like when we are in like awake and we try to imagine and picture, it is like it is taken in a negative sense. So how do we keep awake but still create that image? Because like meditation is stillness, and like I just can't get through that point.
No, that's a very important point, Sri. So it's like this. Intelligence is always there at the peak level. It is just that we create layers that block this intelligence. And these layers of distraction we create, and we call it knowledge. Say, for example, when you get schooled, it has been very clearly established in many sociological surveys, 70 to 80% of intelligence gets destroyed because of schooling. So now we are used to a certain pattern that everybody says that if you are watching normally, it's okay. If you are thinking, you're daydreaming, and it's not good. Well, I would say you achieve only when you daydream, because you are trying to go beyond the obvious. The minimum qualification for success is desperation. If it is interest, we will not go far. If we are desperate, we'll make it. Whatever be the method used by the person, it doesn't matter. But yes, during the daytime, we have tons of distraction, because of which we spend our energy budget on so many different activities. But when we are asleep, these activities go down and the intelligence goes up. So this is very logical and rational. There is nothing to do with spirituality as people know this. So I think it's fine to daydream. What's wrong in that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are run out of time. I guess we have 2 more minutes, and the next speaker.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for providing such an insightful lecture. And I strongly believe that this definitely student molecular biology and biotech. Thank you, such a wonderful. I would welcome NP, who is currently serving as the director of the bioanalytical core NIA of the Center for Supplementation through the Center of Biological Research. He received his degree in biology, St. Petersburg, Russia, 1990. He's active in a research on the use of several derived compounds for the treatment of autoimmune and inflammatory diseases. He has published more than 125 papers in peer-reviewed national and international. He has delivered over 50 oral presentations and more than 100 abstracts at national and international meetings. He is a recipient of travel grant from American Association of Immunologists to attend annual meeting of AAI from May 8 to 12, 2020, held in Honolulu, HI. Welcome you, sir. I'd like to invite you for the process. Please, sir. Please wait. He will join with us shortly.
Dr. Rashmi Mishra. He contacted me regarding this upcoming meeting and asked me to present my work. And it has been a great conversation with her, and at every stage she was very helpful and very kind to accommodate me. So today, the title of my talk is Desperadol, its possible use in the treatment of autoimmune and inflammatory diseases. So what is complementary and alternative medicine? National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine, short NCAM, defines CAM as a group of diverse medical and healthcare systems, practices, and products that are not presently considered to be part of conventional or modern medicine. Conventional or modern medicine is medicine practiced by holders of medical doctor or DO doctor of osteopathy degrees and by their allied health professionals such as physical therapists, psychologists, and registered nurses. What are the major types of complementary and alternative medicine? NCAM groups COM practices into four types: whole medical systems, mind-body medicine, biologically based practices, and manipulative and body practice. So CAM in practice in traditional Indian Ayurvedic medicine is very widely used in almost every Indian home. And one example is actually neem. It's Azadirachta indica, used as pesticides, insecticides, and antimicrobial. At least 10 active ingredients have been identified in neem. And you can see the right side, all different products being sold in the market, which are all the products of neem. When I use toothpaste, which is called neem toothpaste, which is actually very helpful in cleaning and keeping my, mouth clean. Another plant which is very widely used in India is tulsi. We call it a holy plant. Almost every household you will see this plant present. Used for its anti-cancer, antioxidant properties. Eugenol, luteolin, and apigenin are active ingredients. And I have collaborated one of the project at University of Pennsylvania on the use of apigenin as an anti-inflammatory molecules. And we have published papers in 2, 3 different journals. And if you look the right side again, there is a tulsi used widely as a green tea, tulsi tummy, and panch tulsi, and so many products are available in the market. It's actually widely used by the people. And third, which is most important and ingredient in the traditional Indian medicine is actually turmeric, which is almost we eat use every day, widely used as curry powder. It's anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant properties. Curcumin is active ingredient, and again, I have just shown you the right side, all different how people use curcumin. Even today in America, in almost all the big stores, you can see turmeric powder in a different forms, in liquid form, in powder forms being sold as immune enhancing product, and people are buying and using it. The last, but not the least, is the most popular, which is 1,000-year-old traditional, practices in India. Is called yoga, and we have seen that it's very widely. Similarly, in China, which is also a very traditional society, and they have been using traditional Chinese medicines for centuries. One is called acupuncture, corrects imbalances in the flow of Kai energy. Similarly, indigoids, used to treat cancer and chronic diseases. Indirubin is an active ingredient. In our group, we also work on indoles, which is actually a part of indigoids. It's present in the cauliflower, cabbage, and all the cruciferous plants, which is very hard. Again, we have observed it's highly anti-inflammatory. Third one is the ginseng root, used to treat cancer and inflammatory diseases. And here in the right side, all different products being sold in China, which are all traditional medicine. So what is inflammation and diseases? How inflammation, or you can say how inflammation and causes diseases, or what is the relationship between inflammation and chronic diseases? If you see the left side, several years back, Times had a title on this cover page, The Secret Killer. The surprising link between inflammation and heart attacks, cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases. And so long-term low-grade inflammation has been identified as a risk factor for various chronic disease development. If you see the right side, the chart shows you the center chronic inflammations. And because of that, there are around 7 different aspects of the various diseases, which is actually described. So the main topic that the title was resveratrol, and it's used in the treatment of chronic diseases, like autoimmune diseases and inflammatory diseases. So resveratrol, it is a plant-derived natural compound found in red grapes, mulberries, and many other plants. It belongs to phytoalexin group, a class of antibiotic compounds involved in plant defense. Essential component of Kojokon and Oriental medicine used to treat diseases of the blood vessels, heart, and liver. It is highly antioxidant, anti-cancer, and anti-inflammatory. So here, just to show you that the structure of resveratrol and its isoforms, it is commercially available. So it is actually in 2 different forms. The left is actually showing cis, and the right is trans isomer, and these are all the products that are being sold in the market in the any health store, health stores. It is highly present in the red grapes, and that is how it was discovered. And as you see here, it's red wines and bottles, and this is just the list of actually what the amount it is present. So if you go by the amount present in red wine, for that you have to minimum 400 to 50 gram or 500 milligram. You have to drink no, maybe 50 liters of red wines. But today, you know, we can get a capsule which contains around 450 milligram of resveratrol, and it is recommended for human use without any toxicity or any side effects. So first, actually, we wanted to test its anti-inflammatory property, and so we performed in vitro assays where we used the T cells from mouse and cultured in the presence of various concentration. And as you see here, the vehicle is actually in which the resveratrol was dissolved, it is DMSO. And as you see, increase in the resveratrol amount, there is a more apoptosis in T cells. And this is about 12 hours, and the next one is actually showing you 24 hours. And you see there is almost 96% apoptosis in T cells. That means resveratrol is causing death to the T cells, and especially in activated T cells, more compared to the vehicles. Here, just to show you that resveratrol regulates phosphorylation in T cells. And as you can see here, the vehicle has almost no and the presence of corn, T cells express more fast than they are treated with resveratrol. And this is an 18 days industrial control, demonstrating that resveratrol participates in the regulation of FAS and phosphorylated. And as we know that FAS and phosphorylated are involved in apoptotic mechanism leading to the killing of the cells. Here, just to show you that when we use phosphorylated monoclonal antibody, it blocked resveratrol-induced apoptosis in T cells. And then you see here different doses of resveratrol, but and in the presence of phosphorylated antibody, you see that it has been significantly reduced, demonstrating that fast lesion is actively involved in the apoptotic mechanism. This is actually to show you why, Western blot, that the presence of different caspases, look here, caspase 8, caspase 3, caspase 9, and all they are upregulated, especially the active form, in the presence of different doses of resveratrol. C-flip is also has not much effect. PARP also, you see there is a much upregulation, demonstrating that all these caspases that play a role in the fast phosphorylation mediated apoptosis are actually participating, are being regulated by resveratrol, leading to the apoptotic mechanism and killing them. Here, just to show you that mitochondria, which has also been shown that is involved in the apoptotic mechanisms. So here we have looked at stained the cells having all the mitochondria. So if the mitochondria is intact, you can see here in vehicle, this is a more stained with DIOC6. There is no pores in the membrane of mitochondria. But as mitochondria is being damaged, you see that more, less actually mitochondria membrane is stained, and they actually leak here, demonstrating that mitochondria perhaps also involved, other than phospholipid-mediated apoptosis, in resveratrol-induced apoptosis. And this is actually to show you the cytochrome C. So normally in a mitochondria-mediated apoptosis, cytochrome C is actually released from mitochondria that comes in the cytosol and regulates caspase 9, leading to apoptosis. So now actually when we observed in the beginning that all these mechanisms through resveratrol, can resveratrol be used to treat autoimmune and inflammatory diseases? To answer this question, we decided to test the efficacy of resveratrol against multiple sclerosis and autoimmune disease and colitis and inflammatory disease. MS is a chronic autoimmune disease, whereas colitis is an inflammatory disease that affects patients and seriously leading to death. The first experimental allergic encephalomyelitis, or in short EAE, which is actually the model for multiple sclerosis in the mouse. Multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease that affects almost 500,000 people in the US. It is an inflammatory demyelinating disease of the central nervous system. Results from inflammation caused by Th17 and Th1 cells against myelin. So as you see here in the cartoon, the nucleated cell bodies, there's a neurons, myelin sheath, and then in the Th17 and Th1 inflammatory cells, they damage this myelin sheath, leading to exposure of the neuron, and that neuron actually causes pain and actually paralytic symptoms in the patients. So how we actually develop EAE in mouse? So to that actually we use 150 microgram myelin oligo dendrocyte glycoprotein, short MOG, which is actually 35 to 55 peptides, emulsified in complete cleansed adjuvant containing 4 milligram per milliliter to Mycobacterium tuberculosis and injected subcutaneously on both flanks of the, as you see here in the how it is actually being injected subcutaneously. After immunization, we use 200 to 4 nanogram of pertussis toxin injected to a very IP into mice on day 0 and day 2, just to enhance the process of inflammation. And then from second day, we treat mice either with 100 milligram per kilogram body weight or 200 milligram per kilogram body weight by oral gavage. So here actually just to show that the disease as a scoring of the disease post-respiratory treatment or in the presence of the vehicle. And if you see here, these are the different parameters of scoring the symptoms of the EAE in mouse model. And this is the graph that actually in the left side is showing you that control mice that were treated with the MOG and vehicle has a higher score, as much as almost 4. At this score, mice are basically complete paralyzed, and they are so weak they cannot even walk. Whereas when it was treated with Respartol, 100 milligram per kilogram, and you see the symptoms are very mild, and it is in between 1 to 2 clinical score, which means the mouse can still have a good flexibility and can walk. That's demonstrating that Respartol definitely significantly reduces the EAE symptoms in mice. This is again another to show you that we use just another 250 milligram per kilogram, and again we see the same effect as we see in the panel A, demonstrating that resveratrol definitely affects the disease development and helps mice to 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 counter the inflammation. This is just to show you the histopathology of the brain. And if you see here in control, you don't see, you see lots of inflammatory cells. No, not actually in control mice, which is actually no inflammation. Whereas here in inflammation treated with vehicle, and you see that lots of these immune cells is present in the brain. And we treated with Respartol, you see that inflammatory cells number has been very minimal, demonstrating that all these immune cells migrating to the brain either have been killed out of the brain or it has stopped the migration. Most probably that those immune cells have been killed and we are not able to migrate to the brain to damage the myelin sheath. We use another model which is called proteolipid protein PLP 139 151, which is actually have a disease called remission, relapse, and second remission. It's like a human. And here you see it as left panel, all these mice treated with vehicles, and you can see that how badly their scores are. And here this on day 14 and day 22. You see that how mice are. At day 20 again they are a little recovering. So that is how it happens when it's mice actually remission, relapse, and then again remission. if you treat with resveratrol, you see here on day 14, they are actually, by day 22, they have almost fully recovered. Here is a 200 milligram, day 14, no, very low symptoms, and here almost no symptoms. Then 100 milligram, day 8 and 14, you see again, the mice are actually having the disease, but not as bad as you see here in the day vehicle and the week off, demonstrating that resveratrol rescues the mice from the EA development. And this is the graph just to showing you that yes, there is significant decrease when we use resveratrol 200 or resveratrol 100. And when we treat resveratrol from day 1 or we treat resveratrol from day 8, and definitely the impact is there and blocking the development of the mice. This is again to show you reduces IL-17 in mice with EA, and actually you see here control mice. It's almost very low IL-17 in the sera, whereas if you have EA in vehicle, you see that very high amount, significantly high. But mice treated with resveratrol 100 or 250, there's a very, very IL-17 sera of the mice, demonstrating that there's a less number of TS17 cells in the mice, and that's where they are not producing IL-17. Is actually being circulated in the, demonstrating again that resveratrol significantly reduces IL-17 in mice. This is to show you that resveratrol promotes differential generation of Tregs and TS17 cells in mice. Tregs, all you know that it is an immunosuppressive cells. So Tregs are immunosuppressive cells. Tregs are immunosuppressive cells and TS17 inflammatory cells. If you look at the left panel, vehicle has very low number of Tregs, whereas resveratrol treated mice has almost 20, significantly increased. Similarly, in either of the treatment, resveratrol produces more Tregs, which are immunosuppressive, whereas TS17 cells, you see more in the vehicle, very reduced in the resveratrol cells, demonstrating that resveratrol definitely suppresses the generation of TS17 cells and simultaneously promotes the generation of T regulatory cells, which are immunosuppressive, and thus possibly reduces the EA development in. We also looked another cells which is called myeloid-derived suppressor cells. And these myeloid-derived suppressor cells are also immunosuppressive in functions. They are temporarily generated cells which actually try to defense mechanism of the body. So here actually, if you look carefully, the mice with EAE treated with vehicle, there is only 5.9% MDSCs, whereas when treated with resveratrol and day 1 or day 8, it's almost 14.9%, significantly increased MDSCs in mice. Similarly, if you do the day 15, again there is a significantly increased MDSCs in mice. And on day 22, again, there is a significant increase, demonstrating that resveratrol also not only upregulates immunosuppressive Tregs, but also it promotes generation of MDSCs, and perhaps together these two immunosuppressive cells population can significantly downregulate EA development in mice. So in conclusion of this part is resveratrol delays the development and so slows the progression of MOG and PLP-induced EA in mice. Resveratrol kills activated T cells through extrinsic fast ligand and intrinsic mitochondria-associated pathway. Resveratrol differentially regulates generation of Tregs and TS17 cells in mice with EA. Resveratrol also promotes generation of MDSCs that may play a role in AE suppression in mice. So the second part, I also use resveratrol to treat inflammatory inflammatory bowel disease, also called IBD or colitis in mice. Inflammatory bowel disease or IBD is an inflammatory chronic disease and consists of two forms, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Chronic inflammatory conditions of IBD are associated with a high risk of colon cancer. Conventional treatment of colitis can reduce periods of active disease and help to maintain remission, but these treatments often bring marginal results. Patients become refractory and there are side effects also. So here actually, how we generate colitis in mice and treat with resveratrol. We use 3% dextrose sulfate sodium DSS in drinking water, and it has a 3-week cycle. So first, DSS was given over 2.5 cycles, where each cycle in the DSS group consists of 3% DSS in drinking water for 7 days, followed by a 7-day interval with normal drinking water. And we treat resveratrol with 10, 50, and 100 milligram per gram body weight by oral gavage. And inflammation was graded by extent, focal, fecal, or multifocal, diffuse, or extensing areas, depth and penetration of inflammation, lamina propria, submucosa, muscular propria, and subserosa, and a value of 0 to 4, where 0 is not observed and 4 is severe inflammation. So this is actually how we, grade. If you see in the left panel, this is a change in the body weight. So mice that has been treated with vehicle. So you see here, this is actually a vehicle. And if you see resveratrol, there's not much loss. We say vehicle only, it's resveratrol only. They now have DSS plus vehicle. And if you see DSS plus vehicle, you see it's a mouse body weight is significantly reduced. And DSS treated with 10 milligram, 50 milligram, 100 milligram, and issue 100 milligram has almost here, almost there is no body loss. It is as good as like treated with resveratrol or vehicle. This is actually to show you the presence of SAA concentration, and again it is highly reduced, which is an inflammatory marker. And the same thing you can see here in the another panel. And this is actually to show you the colon. Control has a longer colon. Resveratrol also has a similar, but treated with vehicle, the colon is shortened. Treated with 10 is also shortened, but with resveratrol and 50 and 100, you see the colon is actually size increases, demonstrating that resveratrol at higher dose, especially 50 milligram per kilogram and 100 milligram, is highly effective and protects colon from the damage by the DES or inflammation. This is actually to show you the colon histopathology, and you can see here the control is nicely intact, whereas here you can see resveratrol also similar to control, not much change. But you see the DSS and vehicle, there are lots of inflammatory cells here, and you look. But DSS resveratrol, you see almost no inflammatory cells in the colon area, demonstrating that resveratrol has protected the colon damage from the inflammatory cells and actually protected the development of colitis in mice. Here actually again we looked actually different cytokines, especially inflammatory cytokines, and you see the presence of resveratrol, it has been suppressed. And you see IL-6 similarly, IL-1 beta, TN-alpha, and IFN gamma. All these inflammatory cytokines have been reduced in the presence of compared to vehicle-treated mice, demonstrating that resveratrol effectively suppressed inflammatory cytokines vis-a-vis generation of inflammatory cells, Th1 and Th17. We also looked actually, the CD4 T cells count in a spleen, and you can see there is a significant, decrease of actually alpha in the actually spleen, and lamina propria similarly, a significant decrease in the presence of resveratrol, demonstrating that resveratrol very effectively contributed in the suppression of the inflammation, leading to suppression of the colitis development in mice. To conclude this part, resveratrol suppresses symptoms of colitis in mice. Resveratrol suppresses inflammatory cytokines in the spleen, lamina propria, and mesenteric leaf mice with colitis. Resveratrol suppresses serum amyloid A, that which is a marker for inflammation in mice with colitis. And thus, resveratrol can be used as a CAM molecule to treat MS and colitis. That's the actually bottom line. And this is actually the two pictures that I'm showing that our work has been highlighted by European Journal of Immunology, which was the topic was resveratrol, and it was our work was actually highlighted in their title. And similarly, another work from our lab was highlighted in Journal of Biological Chemistry, which actually was based on the other plant-derived compounds for cannabinoids. Last but not the least, I would like to acknowledge my collaborators, Dr. Milind Tripathi, Dr. Prakash Nagarpati, who have been my mentors as well as my collaborators, and for the last 20 years. Jai Singh, also my collaborator, and all graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, and lab technicians who are all present here. And this is me, all present here in this. This is Prakash, this is me, and all these students and postdocs are here. The photo. So I would like to stop here. Thank you. And since it is actually pre-recorded, I may not be able to answer your questions. Still, I would like to thank Dr. Rashmi Mishra for giving me an opportunity to present my work. Hope you enjoyed my talk. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Now, I would request the attendees, if they have any query, please submit in the text box and the answer will be forwarded on the mail IDs. And thank you so much, sir, for providing such an insightful lecture. And I strongly believe that this will definitely help the attendees to gain deeper understanding in inflammatory and autoimmune diseases and their treatments. Thank you once again for all your encouragement and support. Now, I would also like to thank all the attendees for joining the session, and I would request all the attendees to leave the meeting and join the next session, which will start at 2 p.m. Thank you so much.